So let me start the course on database management system. I will present an overview of the fundamentals of database management system, and in the later part of the course, I will present some advanced topics in distributed databases and big data. Distributed databases and big data. So as you all know, also please also please, if you have any questions in between on any of the topics, please feel free to interrupt me, and either by raising a hand or typing in the chat window. Okay, welcome everybody. So the subject of database management system was one of the earliest development of computer science, as uh, automation was all pervading. Various industries were automated, huge amount of data was collected, and then you required a system for managing such data. And uh, the initial data was kept in something called file systems, where you write down all your data in the file, and then the application program accesses the data. The problem with this approach was that you need to, every application program that accesses the data need to know the format of the data. Also, if there is any change in the data or any update in the data, the programs has to change. So all these together led to a uh, development of an isolated system, which is a separate system for database management, which is different from the file management system. So the idea was that, let me shift to the slides. Let me shift to the slides. I will just, so these are the okay, before starting the course, these are the course textbooks that I would consider: the database systems concept by Silversarge and Kort and Sudarshan, and the other textbook, database systems, a complete book by Hector Garcia Morena, Jeffrey Ullman and Jennifer Widom. There is also a nice NPTEL video by my colleague Professor P.P. Chakrabarty, which you might refer to. You need a organized management of large data in various places, in financial, engineering, stock trading, online transactions, in railway, which all of you must have used the Indian Railway IRCTC system. And the database deals with storage, manipulation, retrieval of this kind of information, while providing high quality and real time performance. So the early developers of database system, they felt that to achieve these targets, a file based system was not enough. You need something called isolation of the data from the application program. The application program would be unaware of how the data is formatted, how it is updated. It would just, based on its requirement, send queries to the database, and the database on itself would manage the other aspects of data, like the recency, the consistency. They would be managed. We would now discuss the, with this objective in mind, we would now discuss the basic structure of a database management system. So there are different levels of abstraction that one might require. So at the bottommost level, there is the storage, the hard disks, where all the data resides. These are just bits and bytes of information written in the disks, in the sectors and the tracks of the disks, in just bits and bytes form. This is the lowest form. We call this form as the physical form of the data. In addition to these exact bits and bytes, we also sometimes stores some additional information about the data, which is called a data dictionary. That means some statistics like how much data is there, what are the different for attributes in the data. All these are stored in the data dictionary. And then on top of the data dictionary, there is something called a query manager. So what the query manager does is that it kinds of acts as an intermediate, an interface between the programs, the application programs, and the low level storage in the hard disk. So in the let me first tell what these application programs are. So in the top level, we have the application programs, which are maybe application program interfaces, APIs, or maybe just queries, or maybe the application programs directly themselves, or maybe some change in the database schema. So these are all external requirements, external queries that might come. And what the query manager does is that this note that these external queries are like high level specifications of the data. They tell you about the requirement at a very abstracted scale, abstracted level. Like just maybe it would tell, give me the address of all the students attending the QEEE course. Okay, this is a high level specification, whereas the actual information about all the students doing the QEEE course might be stored in actual some files in bits and bytes form in the hard disk. So what the query manager does is that it kind of takes in this high level requirement, compiles it, processes it, does several other operations like optimization and scheduling of when to take the data, and sends request for these data items to the storage manager, the lowest level, the data store, and the results that it gets on the data store, again it converts to a in a form which is high level and send it back to the application interface or the query. Any database would be kind of a 3-level structure. Bottommost the data store, above that the query manager, above that the application program. The entire theory of database we will study basically deals with different type of management strategies at each of these individual levels. These details I will maybe go later. So if we examine further into this, the database storage would have a data delivery system, would have a query storage manager which sort of schedules which data to access first, which data to access later. Then you have a query manager which data manipulation and query compilation optimization it does. Then you have a application program. So this is just the previous diagram in more detail. So based on this diagram, we can divide data into 3 levels. At the lowest, as I have said before, is the physical level, where we have the actual data in bit and byte form in the hard disk, and then the important thing to study there is the data handling issues. How do you query? How do you manage? How do you maintain integrity? How do you recover from failure? How do you maintain security? At the top of this physical level is the logical level, which doesn't bother about how in bit and byte form in the hard disk the data is stored, but it rather bothers about what the data represents. How does it represent student information? What are the fields of the student information? How does the student information relate to other information? So this part about relations, semantics, what does a student have a roll number or a unique identifier, a constant? So this type of thing are called data model, or rather a logical model of the data. There are different types of logical model that are popular, that are studied. The entity relationship model, we will go into details of this, which basically talks about you model everything as an entity and relation. Then you have a relational model which is derived from the entity relation model. Further abstractions are the object oriented model, the semi structured model, the unstructured model, and also some other models like network model and hierarchical model. So in the today's talk, in the today's lecture, we will cover first these models of the data and the related query language. And on the top, even on top of this logical level, is something which is at the very top, which we said like in this slide. So if we look at this slide maybe, so this is the physical model, this deals with the logical model, and above the logical model where a program would access the data is called the view model. This is only for the program. It is a further abstraction of the logical model, because the logical model itself may be very elaborate and very deep, and all user may not require. For example, when you are accessing the railway reservation in IRCTC website, as an user of the system, you don't much bother about how the data is stored. You are bothered about what are the reservation, what are the trains, and what are the stations between which trains are available. So this would just the view level would just give you only this view, only this view. Let me see if I have a question. So what we will do is that we will have this, we will study these models. The first model we will study. Note that this is only a logical model. While making this model, we don't worry about how it is stored in the, we just worry what the data represents. So it is only a conceptual model. Okay, the first conceptual model we will study is called an entity relationship model. One of the most popular model of data. It is called the ER model also. So there are some three basic or four basic concepts. The first is, when we represent data logically like this, the first thing we represent is what are the entities, what are the objects. This is also how human beings also we see. When we are trying to find some structure, some organization in something, we first see what are the entities, what are the important things. For example, I am trying to model a library system. The most common example, a library system. So of course, if you think what are there in the library, what are the different things in the library, who are the important things in the, you see at some level there are two important things in the library: a book and an user. A book and a user. So these rectangles, these boxes, we call them as entities. So maybe on the top level what we see, there are only two type of entities, a book and a user. You see, again the purpose here, what we are trying to do, we are trying to bring some order, some organization in the data. And then we see that these two entities are related by a relation called maybe a borrowing relation. A user will borrow a book. That is the relation. We might possibly have other entities in a library also. Maybe things like a maybe a room where the books are kept. That can be another entity. Then we can have a relation between a room and a book, saying that this book is kept in this room. Another relation we might also have done. Okay, so this rhombus, this diamond is the relation, a borrowed relation relating to entities, to boxes. Now each of these entities and relations can have certain fields, certain values, which we call attribute. For example, here a book can have the attribute like say accession number, the title of the book, the author of the book, the publisher of the book. So what we do against each of this entity, a box, we draw these ellipses. These ellipses, there are four ellipses for the book representing the four attributes: accession number, title, author, and the publisher. And then one of these attribute I am showing in orange, it is the accession number. We will call this as the primary attribute, in the sense that every different book will have an unique value of this attribute. Okay, we call it as a primary key or a primary attribute, represented by a different color. And then similarly, the user has three attributes: card number, which is primary, unique to every user, some name of the user and name of the user and address. So these has 3 attributes. Okay. So now uh, the relation between these two entities, the borrow, that might as well have an attribute. So in this case, the date of issue, because see, a user can borrow a book several times. So I want to identify every time the user borrows a book as a separate case of borrow. So what I do, this borrow relation, I give an attribute called date of issue, DOI. Okay. So and that is again unique for every borrowing instance. I call it as a primary attribute. That is a primary attribute. Now, in this basic structure, I can have something like constant. For example, I can put a constant that a user cannot borrow more than 4 books. User cannot borrow more than 4 books, and one book can be issued to only one user at a time. Only one book can be issued to only one user at a time, and an user cannot borrow more than 4 books. So I on this, so this is a restriction on the relation. How many instances of borrow you can have for a single book for a single user. So I write here 0:4. Okay, so that means 4 users, and if one user borrows a book, nobody else can borrow the book. Okay, so that is a participating constant. Participating constant. Right. Let me summarize what I have said by this example. So there are these following basic objects. We have an entity. So an entity is a object that is present, exists, and distinguishable from other objects. And an entity set is a set of entities which have similar properties. Similarly, each entity will have attributes which are nothing but fields or properties of the entity. Every entity set will have the same set of attributes. Each of these attributes, for example, here have their own domain. For example, the domain of the title of a book can be any character string of a certain length or of an unrestricted length. Similarly, author may be again a character string, publisher may be character string, whereas accession number cannot be any character string. It can be maybe an integer only, some number. Similarly, the user card number might be, its domain may be the setup of integers. The domain of name attribute may be set up of strings. The name as domain of address may be the set of all again the strings. So these types are called the domain of that. So with these entities and attributes, now we have a relationship between these entities. Maybe that means one instance of an entity. Note that these boxes I have done, they are not, they represent not a single book but the category book. Everything that is a book, that entire set would be. So see, this model, it is kind of a map. It says that this is the structure of the data. Exactly how many books are there, how many users are there, what are the name of the users, those are not captured in this diagram. Those are not captured. We only capture the structure of the data. So these boxes are basically entity types, a representation of the entity. Now, when I actually go to a library, there may be several instances of this entity. Okay, several examples of this entity, each having some title, some author, some publisher, and so on. Similarly, the relation is also an template, a map, a structure. Actually, when we have the instances, different entities, and then each combination of this entity, so one book, one user, they together would form an instance of the relation. Say for example, if there are 5 users and 10 books, and user 1 has borrowed the 9th book, then user 1 and comma the 9th book, these would form an instance of the relation borrow. On some date of issue would form an instance of the relation borrow. So similarly, there may be different instance of relation. So now some of the attributes which are again, as I said, are unique for all the instances of the entities in an entity set would form a key of the a candidate key of that entity. Say, it is also sometimes possible, but not a single attribute, but a combination of two or more attributes form an unique value. Uh, uh, so there are different possibilities. For example, if I look at all the books of all instances of the book entity, the accession number of the book is unique for every book. That would form a candidate. Similarly, for users, the maybe you don't have a card number for user, but maybe the name cannot form a candidate key because two users might have same name. But maybe the pair name and address together is different. So one address does not have 2% of the same name. In that case, the attribute set name and address would form a candidate. So what is a candidate key? It is a subset of the attributes. So all these attributes together would be. So for the example, in the entity book, these 4 attributes would be, I would call a attribute set of the entity book. A subset of the attributes, in this case only the accessor number, which is unique for every instance of the attribute of the entity, would be called a candidate key of that. So this definition you keep in mind. A candidate key is a key which has unique value for all the instances of the entity. Sometimes it happens because see, but whether they will have a unique value, say for example the name and address pair, there is no guarantee. I can design the data set, but who will be users of this library, I have no control. So maybe in a same house, same address, there are 2% of the same name. Okay, so it will no longer be a candidate. As a database designer, what I can do, I can by design forcefully introduce an attribute which is bound to be different for all the instances. So it is a candidate key, it is unique for all the instances, but it is designed to be a candidate. It always will be unique, no matter what the users are. Such a candidate key would be called a primary. So here, for example, every book is intentionally given a different accession number so that it is different for everything. So in that's why it is a primary. Similarly, all students are intentionally given a different roll number as an identifier by the university. So that's why it is a primary. Similarly, we have the mapping constant for the relations. That means it says that how many instance of one can say here how many instance of book can participate in one single instance of the borrow relation. That means if we take one borrowing of an user, so with one user how many book can be related. So for example, here a book to user is a one-to-one relation. One book can be issued to one user only. Whereas a user to book is a one-to-many. One user can borrow many books. So these are called mapping constants. Mapping means one instance of entity here, this relation maps to one user here. This user has borrowed this. Is there any constant on that? That's we call as a mapping constant. So this is an I again write down what I have told, that these are the attributes, these are the entities, and this is the structure, this is the mapping constant. Okay. And this entire representation I would call it as an ER diagram, a entity relation diagram, a kind of a map, a structure representing this data. Now let us take another example. I urge you all to solve it. I will also solve it myself so that you understand the concept. If you have any doubt, you please raise your hand or tell me. So I will switch over to the video. I will switch over to the, say for example, I want to take the QEEE courses, all the QEEE courses. So what I want, there are different courses, different students are doing it. I want to make a database for all this. So let me list what are the entities. Entities. So again, not the entity types, not the actual instance of the entity. What are the entities? I can have entities like I can have a course, say the database management system, a course, that can be an entity. A student who is doing the course, that can be an entity. A teacher who is teaching the course, that can be an entity. A venue, a classroom where the course is being conducted, that can be an entity. There can be other entities also. Maybe the different colleges where this course is being taken, that can be an entity. Okay, so these are the different entity type. So if we try to draw a yard diagram of this, I will draw like this. So maybe I have a course, one box I draw for the entity course, and then I have say another entity, a student, and then maybe another entity, a teacher, another entity, maybe a venue, or in my case IIT Kharagpur, where I am taking the course, and maybe the colleges where the course is being broadcast. These are my entities. What are the attributes that an entity can have? Let us take the student entity. A student will have some roll number. A student will of course have a name, will have a good name, will have an address, maybe other information like which year, third year or fourth year, or maybe another thing like which stream, computer science or electrical engineering or mathematics, it can have other stream. So these are the attributes. Out of this, the roll number is unique for all students. So I will call this as a candidate key. In this case, the roll number is intentionally made to be unique for everything. So it is not only a candidate key, it is also a primary key. So I will denote it as a primary key. Often how you denote? You underline this name, underline this name. Okay, and that I will call as a primary attribute or a primary. Similarly, others will have, as teacher will also have a name, and university where the teacher teaches, and address of the teacher, okay, and so on. Similarly, the venue will be the university where the venue is located, the slots when this available. Similarly, the course will have attributes like name of the course, the course ID, the slot of the course, total the total number of hours in the course, and so on. The college again will have things like address, name, and so on. Note that it is not absolutely necessary to always have a candidate key or a primary key for an entity. For example, I might not give any primary key to the venue. Okay, I might not give. Whereas a teacher, maybe some employee ID or something may be an primary key or a candidate key. I may not, it is optional, I may or may not give. Now, there are relations between this. For example, a student takes a course. A student, I'll call it credits a course. So credit is a relation. Credit is a relation. Student credits a course. A teacher teaches a course or instructs a course. So, instructs is a relation. Instruct is a relation. Similarly, a course is located in a venue or broadcast from a venue. That is a thing. A course is broadcast to certain colleges. That is a relation. Broadcast to that is a relation. So, I can have different relation. Now, there can be participatory constraints, like a student cannot do more than 4 courses at a time. Okay, or some venue are available only or can run only maybe 2 courses at a time or only 1 course at a time. So, there I can put, or a teacher cannot teach more than 2 courses at a time. I can put constraints on this. So, this entire diagram would be called a ER diagram. ER diagram. Okay. Note that sometimes you cannot draw a complete ER diagram in one go. Maybe you have an initial idea, you first make a rough sketch, then as you understand more details of the data, you add more details. Maybe I can add details more, maybe like what is the textbook of the course, that might be another entity, what are the books that are text in course, maybe text for multiple courses. Similarly, I can have who are the teaching assistants for the course, that can be another entity. So, gradually I can refine this and make the ER diagram more detailed. I can make it more detailed. Okay. So, as a as an IT professional, if you go to industry, and the first thing you have to design a database system. So, see, these are I let me tell you, if you actually look at the industry, still now 60% of the work that that the IT industry does all over the world basically deals with managing data. For example, say the Swachh Bharat Abhijan. Maybe we want to manage what all is going on in the Swachh Bharat Abhijan, and maybe an company, say, let's say some company XYZ, as you are an employee of that company and you want to design a database for this. So, what you do is that first time you see the first thing you do to write this data is to structure the data, draw the ER diagram of the data. So, this is the most critical part. All the further design of the database will depend on how well you have drawn your ER diagram. Okay. So, say if you join an IT industry and you are about your job, you take on a project and there is some client, and the client has all this kind of data, and what you are developing an IT solution for the client. The first thing you do, all the different requirements of the client, you capture it in this kind of ER diagram. Of course, I have drawn a very simple example. In actual real life, when you go, it is much more complex. It is much more details. In fact, it will not be a single person won't be able to do it. There will be multi. So, you have heard the term, the software architects. The architects would design all this. They would design this. There will be multiple architects. They will design all the details, and once they have designed this ER diagram, they will now convert it to things like a database tables, database queries, and then they will write application programs to access these queries, and then they will build web interfaces. So, let me come back to the, let me just tell you the steps once more. Database design. Step 1. So, I am just trying to give you an insight what you would actually do in industry. Many of the companies, when they recruit students, they would asks you about this process. So, is understand the organization for which you are designing. So, in this case for QEEE, I already know what it is. Often it will happen that you will not know. So, you have to go to that company, go to that organization, talk to them and see what kind of thing. Next is draw yard diagram. You have to draw the yard diagram. Okay. This is where your engineering skill comes into picture. You have to really master this skill. You have to think. I can only tell you these basics, but actually how you will design I cannot teach you. It is a matter of your own interest, of your own insight. Only way to achieve this is to practice a lot. So draw the yard diagram. In the next slides, I'll explain this. Convert to tables, convert the diagram to a set of tables. I'll tell you later what the tables are basically. Then design queries. Next would be, so once you design the table, you exactly know what is your data requirement, accordingly you design the queries. Next is design application program interfaces for the actual software to access this data and a user interface, which may be a web browser. For example, irctc.com, you have some forms, you have to give the stations, the date of journey, this you have to design. This again is a critical job because you have to know what the user needs, accordingly you have to design this. Or it may be not a web browser, maybe a mobile phone, maybe you are booking Uber taxi through mobile phone, then you have to build the interface and through that do it. So, you have to also do it. So, this is the entire job of something called a IT project, IT system project. These are the steps. And I would be very happy if you as a student can practice this and master this the job, so that you can do well in the industry. Okay. So, now let me come back to little more detail. So, I have only told you the basics of yard diagram. Let me come back to the slides to add some more details to it. Okay. By the way, before coming to this, let me tell you a little more detail. So, sometimes there are more level of abstraction. So, sometimes what we do is that a set of this a part of this thing we can write it as module. So, for example, if you have a university, this library system is part of a university system, university yard diagram, then I would club this entire thing into a module. So, there are some more detail, maybe in the book or in the lecture notes I have given, I can there are some more type of detail that people put into this diagram, but this is the overall diagram. If you can do it properly, that's fine for the initial. So, now assuming that for an client you have drawn this diagram properly, capturing all the details of the data. Now, we go into a little more detail. Okay. The thing is, this diagram is good for human understanding. Human can look at the diagram and figure out what are the parts of the data, what are the relation between them. But if you want to store this data in a computer, maybe this diagram is not enough. You have to have some format, some data structure to capture the information of this data. So, the data structure that we'll use to represent this model is called a table, and it can be shown that all your information of the data that we have captured in this diagram can also be captured by creating in this data structure, creating this data structure. In fact, if you represent data using this data structure and not this diagram, that also from something, another logical model of data, which is called the relational model of data. Note the term a relational model of data. So, this relational model turns out to be the de facto standard which is followed by all commercial database, because for representing it in a computer. Of course, for human design still people draw the ER diagram, but for representing in a computer any commercial database, say Oracle or IBM DB4 or MySQL, anybody will store it in a model called a relational model. And all such databases which adopt this relational model are called a RDBMS system, Relational Database Management System. Okay. So, we'll now explain the details of this relational database management system. Note that this relational database management system are derived from the entity relationship model. Everything that is there in the ER model, we can also represent it as a relational model. Okay. So, I will come back to the note. So, what the relational model does is that it says that all the data in your organization can be represented by a set of tables. Okay. So, tables are two-dimensional structures. They are like matrices. They have columns and they have rows. So, we have columns and we have rows, and the relational model says that all data can be represented as a collection of number of tables. Okay, collection of a number of tables. So, what does these tables represent? Each of the table will have a name. Say book is the name of a table. The name sort of reflects what kind of information is there in the table. Say maybe student is a name, is a table. Teacher is a table, and these columns would correspond to attributes. So, this book, student, you can already guess from the ER diagram, these are the entities. So, for each of the entities in the ER diagram, we will have a table. What does the columns of the table represent? They represent the attributes of the table. So, for example, book has an accession number, that is an attribute. A book has a name, a book has an author. So, these are these three attributes. Similarly, a student will have a roll number, a name, a department. A teacher will have an employee ID, a name, an university, and department. These are the attributes. Okay, so every column is an attribute. Every row represent one instance of a book having different values of this attribute. Maybe accession number 101, name C++ programming, author Bal Guruswamy. Okay, this entire row is an instance of book. Okay, this entire row is an instance of book. So, this book is a table. I write down. This is an column is an attribute having some domain, some type of values it can have. A set of attribute values in one row represent a record or an instance, all different names, or a tuple. A record or a instance or a tuple. Okay. So, You can now imagine, so one row of this table sort of represent an object of the type book. Okay, and this entire table is a set of such objects. It is a type, it is a set of, and every row is a instance of that sub type object. So similarly, you can have student 1011, name Pavitra, department computer science and engineering 1012, name Sujoy, department CSE. So there can be different such rows. Okay. So this is, I think this is clear. So basically it is a very simple structure, a table which has a name, a type, some columns, attributes and some instances, rows. Each set of one row with set of attributes is called a tuple or a instance or a record. So there will be different instances of a book, different instance of the student, different instance of the teacher. This entire collection of these three tables would be called a database. Now there are two different notations. This table book, I write it in the following way. I write the name of the table book, and then within bracket I write the attributes of the table. Okay. So this representation is called the schema of this table or structure of this table, schema of this table. Okay. Similarly, note that this accession number is a primary key, so I underline it. Similarly, student will have role, name, department, schema of the student table, teacher, employee ID, which is again a primary attribute, name, university, department. This is the schema of the teacher table. These three tables together would be called a database, and just this representation would be called a database schema. Database schema. Okay. So what you can, the first step, as I have said before, after drawing the ER diagram is to convert this table. So what you do, from this diagram you get a database schema. How do you get the schema? Maybe you have already guessed how I have got the schema. I have got the tables from the diagram. The first thing I did is that for every entity in the diagram, a book, a student, a teacher, I introduced a table, I allocated a table. Maybe that is not enough, because I need more thing also. Maybe a book is borrowed by a student, that also has to be represented. So I introduced another table called a borrow table. Borrow table. The table has, maybe I can put only two attributes in the table: the roll number of the student who has borrowed a book, and maybe the accession number of the book that is borrowed. Maybe just two columns. Okay. Maybe I can add other things also. Maybe the date of issue also I can add maybe. So one instance of the borrow table, one row of the borrow table would be maybe on 25/9 a book is borrowed by roll number 1011 of the book accession number 101. So this is an instance of the borrow. Okay. So this is additional borrow table. Note that the beauty of this relational database system is that all the information about data, who has borrowed book, what has borrowed book, I can reconstruct I can retrieve from these tables only. For example, if I ask the question, give me the name of the student who has borrowed the Silver Search Code book. So what I'll do, I'll find out the accession number of the Silver Search Code book first from the authors. That accession number, I'll consult the borrow table. I'll find out what is the roll number of the student who has done that. From that roll number, I'll go to the student table and find out what is the name of that student of that roll number. So all the information I need, I can pick up from this. I'll just answer your question. I have seen the question and just let me complete this and then I'll answer. So this will be called the database schema. It is a conversion from the ER diagram. These actual tables with different rows populated with values is called an instance of this schema or an instance of this database. So this entire set of values I have will be called a database instance. As we keep on using the database, more books are issued, no books are bought, more students enroll, this instance changes. New rows get added, old rows get deleted, rows get changed. Okay. So the instance changes from time to time, but the schema remains the same unless you change it. So this difference you should understand, that one is a schema which gives the structure of the tables or the diagram, one is an instance which give values of different attributes of different rows in the table. Okay. So these two together, a schema and the corresponding instance, would be called a relational database. All our studies that we present in the rest of the course will stick to this basic relational model, basic relational database. Okay, I'll take the question now. There is a question that what is the difference between a candidate key and a primary key? The answer is the values of candidate key as well as primary key both are unique for every row of a table. So every row will have a different, every row, for example roll number, every row will have a different value of the roll number. Okay. So it is possible that both primary key or candidate key may not be a single attribute, they may be combination of attributes. Okay. Maybe role and department, every department has its own set of role, maybe role and department together form a candidate. Okay. So both a primary key is also a candidate key. It is supposed to have different values for different rows. If one of the candidate key is specially designed or designated to be always different for every row, we call it as a primary key. So a primary key is a intentionally designed candidate. Why do we do this? Because see, whether something is a candidate key or not depends on the instance. It may be some depends on what type of students come, what type of thing. For example, name if I choose, maybe in this, for these two instances, a name is a candidate key. But maybe if another person with name Pavitra comes, it is no longer a candidate. The purpose of primary key is to remove this possibility. That means whenever a new student enrolls, he is given a distinct roll number, a new roll number. So anybody who joins a university has a new role. So that is the thing. It is by design always supposed to be different. Any other question? Maybe you should ask some question. Otherwise, I'll see. Again, I repeating. There are extremely good textbooks. There are many of these things are available in the textbook. Many of you must have also studied it in your course. The purpose of my course is if there is some insight, something special, something which are failing to understand from the textbook, or some insight, that you should ask me. Okay. So I'll be very happy. Please, you should ask some question. Anybody, you can raise your hand, or maybe I'll have a look at the viewers. Any question? Please raise a question if you have understood this. If you have understood anybody raise a question or any doubt, or what I would suggest is you can take some example. For example, maybe the movies that are released, all the movies that are released, and I want to, as somebody in a movie industry, some movie industry is my client. So they release different movies to different halls, and different halls, different viewers are there. They buy ticket online from Book My Show, or they buy ticket in the counter of the cinema halls. So how do I manage? How do I represent a schema for that? Maybe you can think, and yeah, I have a question. Okay, so there is another question, good question. What is a super key? Candidate key, I have defined that it is a subset of attributes which is unique for every row. But the thing is, this has a slightly triviality. Like, see, if this roll number is unique for every row, the combination of name and roll number or name and department will also be unique for every row. If the role is unique for every row, every superset of that is also unique for every row. Okay. So, any such sets, for example, the role department pair, any such set which is unique for every row is called a super key. The minimal super key, that is the smallest subset of the super key. In this case, if I take roll number of name, it is different for every row, and the smallest subset roll, only the roll subset of that is also unique. This smallest subset would be called a candidate key. So, a super key is any subset of attribute which is unique. A candidate key is the smallest substitute of subset of attribute which is unique. So, for example, role department pair is a super key, because of course, if role is different, role department pair also has to be department different, and only roll number is the candidate. Very good question. Okay, so there are a good number of questions on candidate key. Let me explain in more detail. And attributes, I'll first leave this column free, are name, department, and maybe college. And I am writing down the instance. Okay. Okay. So, can you tell me uh, which is the combination of attribute value which is unique for each of the rows of this table? So, the name is unique for every row. So, name is unique for every row. I call name as a super key. The department is not unique for every row, so it is not a super key. The college again is unique for every row. I call college as a super key. So, you carefully follow what I am telling. So, I just only tell something called a super key. So, name is a super key. Why name is a super key? Because every row of this table, if I examine, has a different value of name. Name is a super key. Every row of the college, if I examine, it is different. So, college is a super key. Now, tell me, this pair name and college together. This is also different for every row. This is also a super key. Similarly, name department pair. If name is different for every row, name department pair is also different, because this pair has Pavitra CSE, this pair has Surya CSE, this pair has Sudarshan E. So this string together, if we look at, they are different for every row. So this is also a super key. So anything, any subset of attribute which is different for every row is a super key. Okay. Similarly, if I have college versus department, that is also a super key. That is also a super key. Okay, because this IIT BE, CSE, IIT Chennai, CSE, IIT KGP, these are different for every row. Now, but see, there is some kind of redundancy, because see, these two super keys are subset of super key. So what we do, we identify the smallest, the minimal super key, which is this and this. These are the minimal super. All these are supersets of that. So these two minimal super key would be called a candidate key. It will be called a candidate key. Okay. So name and college, because they are the smallest super keys, they would be called a candidate key. Right. So I think this is clear. So the difference between super key and candidate key, both super key and candidate key are different for different rows. The smallest of the super key, any other super key is a superset of that, is a candidate, are the candidate keys. So you can have multiple candidate keys. These two are the candidate keys. Now suppose there is another thing. Say there is another person, Sujoy, not in the CSE but in the E department of IIT KGP. Okay. So now can I say that name, is it a super key? Name is no longer a super key. If it is not a super key, it is not a candidate key also. Similarly, college, now there are two IIT KGPs. So two rows have same values of that. So college is also no longer a super key. Similarly, none of these are super keys anymore. None of these are super keys because they have now identical values for two rows. Okay. So that means, what is a candidate key? What is a super key? That will depend on the instance of the database. If you get more instance, maybe also something will change. If we delete one instance, maybe it will again become a candidate. So to do away with this dependency on the actual instance, I introduce another attribute called a role, and I say that any student who does the QEEE course is given a distinct roll number. Even if their name is same, if they are a different person, they are given a different roll number by force. Note that this roll number is nothing physical. My name is something I have, my department is something I have done in real life, college is something I have done in real life, but this roll number is something a database manager has given me. It has nothing to do with my choice, my reality. It is a system given value, system given number for benefit of the management of the system. So to identify every student, that's why a university gives a roll number. Note that, so this roll number is definitely a super key. It has distinct values. No, it is also minimal. That means nothing. It is only one key, so no subset of it exists. So it is also a candidate key. It is also a candidate key because it is minimal. No subset of it exists, and because it is under all instance of the database, whatever value you give, it will remain a candidate key by design. That's why it is a primary key. Whatever may be the instance, it will always stay candidate. Okay, so that is the difference. I think I have answered satisfactorily the candidate key question. If you have any other, I have given examples also. If you have uh, uh, any other questions, you can type in the. Gayatri from PSC has another very interesting question. What is a value-oriented mapping concept? What is an example? Of course, we can have an example of a value-oriented mapping concept. For example, suppose I have the students, and then I have a set of courses. I have a set of courses, and courses have a course ID, a name, and a department which offers this course. So maybe course ID is 111, name is DBMS, and department is CSE. So now I can have a value oriented constant that I can say that only students whose department are CSE and EE can take a course offered by CSE department, or maybe even further. Only CSE students can take CSE courses. Computer science and engineering courses can only be taken by computer science and engineering students. Okay. So if we look at the which student has taken which course, that constant, they may be taken, I call it. So course ID versus roll number versus department. If I put this, which student has taken which course, only instances, only rows where this department field matches of one instance here and one instance here. This course can be an electrical course, a CSE course, every course. This similarly students from all department, but they can be part of the taken relation only if this value matches. Okay, so this would be a value oriented. This is a very simple form. There may be other type which I later when I go in detail of functional dependencies I will explain it. There is another interesting question by Rana Pratap also from PSC. If primary key and candidate key are same, when can you use primary key? The question is that see theoretically primary key and candidate keys are identical, you can use any of them. But in practice, since primary keys are independent of the instances, it is better to use the primary key always. There is another question, let me just give me a minute, I will put on my specs. How is the ER model extended to object orientation? Very good question again. So this is a ER diagram. The problem with ER diagram is it becomes very large, and it will be a big, not only this small sheet of paper will not hold it, it will be a big paper. So it's difficult to go through it. So instead of writing all the details, I can have things like, see, one thing I observed is, see, both the student and teacher, they have a name, they have an address, they have a department, they have an university, and so on. So can I make a larger category? Let's say human beings, larger category, and student, teachers, TAs are instances of the human being, and some attributes are common, they inherit from this parent type. The name, all humans have a name, all humans have an address, so they inherit this. So this way, if you add abstraction levels, if you add higher levels and then inherit some attribute, it would become a object oriented model. Most of the modern industry standard would not directly use a ER diagram, but a object oriented ER diagram where these abstractions are given. Any other question? Maybe I'd like to, you can by audio ask some question, that will be good. I should actually feel you are understanding or not. Okay, any of you, if you have any question, I can, maybe I'll go to, there was one question from Gayatri. You can put your hands up if there is a question. See, again I reiterate, see, there are extremely good textbooks. This is not the issue. The reason we would probably enjoy this whole thing is that if we can interact. I love very much to interact with you. So if you have any question, please raise your hand. I think it is more useful to answer the questions than no, it's the same question basically. So this is Parasu from BSc, and from GHRC is Snehalata. Her question is there any practical approach in some normalization, or whenever we convert ER to tables, in which normalization? Yes, of course, this is a very good question. I'll explain this. I'll explain this soon. Okay, and maybe we should go back to our discussion. Maybe we should go back. I'm starting again. Please pay attention. Now we have these tables. Say student, and we have values here. Say now, how do I get different type of? For example, if I ask the question, give me the name of all students who have done the DBMS course. How do I get that? So we need some language, some way of specifying this, and these are called database query languages. Database query languages. So most of these language have a mathematical or a theoretical basis. What do they mean mathematically, and have an actual implementation. So the first thing that we'll study is the mathematical form is something called a relational algebra. Which works on this table. So just like what you do using algebra, you write things like x plus y into z. So you have basic entities or variables x, y, z, and you have operators plus and star, and then you put them together into expressions. So there are these variables, you have the operator, variables are x, y, z, you have the operators plus or into, and this entire thing is an expression. Note that this expression value itself can be equated to another variable, let us say a. So a equal to x plus y into z. So the expression value itself is another variable, some value. So in relational algebra, these variables are nothing but the tables. So in normal algebra, variables are numbers. Here the variables are more complex, they are tables, not a single number. There are some operators we will study, and similarly there are expressions whose result after evaluating the expression is another table. So this is the relational algebra, and there is an implementation of this in actual databases. the SQL, the all pervading language in database. So it is an implementation of the relational algebra. So why do we call it as relational algebra? It is fine. You have variables, you have operators. Why relational? We are actually working on tables. Mm, Let me go back to our definition of relation in mathematics. So in mathematics, you have studied relation. What is a relation? Definition of relation in mathematics. Suppose I have two sets, A and B, and there are elements of this set. For example, set A may be all students doing this course, and the elements of set A are the individual students. Similarly, there is a set A. Let me write it down. Student set. Similarly, there is a course set, all courses being offered, and there are these different courses. The Cartesian product represented by A cross B is another set, but whose elements are all possible pairs from A and B. So, we form a larger set whose pairs are A1, B1, A1, B2, A1, B3, all possible pairs, A2, B1, A2, B2, A2, B3, all possible pairs, others are also there. So, these all possible, so I represent them as ordered pairs. So, note that this comes actually from the definition of the Cartesian coordinate system. So, what is a Cartesian coordinate system? If you have two coordinates x and y, you take any x value, you take any y value, a pair xy of a coordinate point would be a point in a two-dimensional coordinate system. So, this Cartesian coordinate system would be all possible values of x and y, all possible different values of x corresponding a value of x corresponding value of y. All possible combinations would form a Cartesian coordinate system. Okay, and the general definition is this is a Cartesian product. So, please think on yourself, what is the size? How many elements are, if A has 4 elements, B has 3 elements, how many elements are there in the Cartesian product? There will be 12 elements. There will be 12 elements. No, there is no question. Okay, so there are 12 elements. If we take a subset of these 12 elements, let me call that subset as R. If we take a subset of the CLM, maybe only 5 of them. So this is A cross B. This is R. Not 5. Maybe I take the subset where this subscript match. So I take only A1, B1, A2, B2, and A3, B3. So maybe in the coordinate system, it will take maybe where x is equal to y, so 45-degree line, one subset of points. So any such subset of this Cartesian product would be a relation on A and B, one particular relation. So what is this relation R? It says that if this subscript matches, that is a relation. So this subset of this will form a relation. Similarly, this x equal to y is a relation. X equal to 2y, x equal to 2y is another relation. These points is another relation. 2x equal to y, these points is another relation. All the so a subset of point of all these points, of among all these points, one particular subset, every particular subset defines a relation. So among all these 12 points, 4 into 3, 12 points, if we take any some of them or all of them, some of them, that would be denoted as a relation. That would be denoted as a relation. So can we can you, for example, define any other relation on A and B beside that this 1 matches, 2 matches, 3 matches, any other relation? Maybe I can make a relation another. So this is I call R1. I can make another relation R2, like say like this. That difference between this subscript is say 2. So A1 B3. Okay, A1 B3. A4 B1. Oh, no, A3 B1. Subset difference is 2, 1 and 3. A3 B1. Okay, or maybe maybe B3 A1 B, or A3 B1. That can be. Okay, so you take any subset that would be treated as a relation. That would be treated as a relation. So you can this I think you have also already done in your discrete algebra course. There are many possible relations that you can define. So let me restate the basic idea. If you are given two sets with some element, first you take the Cartesian product, all possible combinations you take. Then take some of these possible, some of them, pick up some of them, put them together. This subset I would call as a relation. So a relation is a subset of the Cartesian product of two sets. Now what has this to do with our tables? What has this to do with our tables? If you have any question again, please raise. All right. So suppose we look at the student table, and then there are three attributes. Let's say the roll number, the name, and the department. So let me come back to writing. So I have a table. Student table. Okay, so I have two entries. Now do the following. Take a set of all possible roll numbers, maybe 101, maybe up to 4 roll numbers, they are all possible roll numbers. Take a set of all possible names, Pavitra, all possible names, all possible departments. Okay. So what is the Cartesian product of these three set? Role, name, department. It will be all possible combinations. So if we take this Cartesian product, role cross name cross three-dimensional system, it will have things like 101 role, name Pavitra, department CSE, role 101, name Surya. Note that all possible combination, department CSE, role 101, name Sudarshan, department CSE, all possible combination I can take. So there will be 4 into 3 into 3. So many possible combinations are possible. That would form my Cartesian product set. But see, all possible combinations are not true. For example, if the roll number is 101, that person's name is not Suja, his name is Pavitra, and his department is CSE. So this is a valid entry. This is not a valid entry. So what we do, among these all possibilities, some possibilities we pick up, some subset we pick up and put them here and put them here. Okay. So I can say the student table is sum of the entries of this role cross name cross department. Role cross name cross. All combinations of role, name and department, whatever may they be, they may be false, they may be correct. We pick up only few of them, which actually exist. Actually, there is a student with roll number 101, name Pavitra, department CSE. Those I pick up and put it here, and that will be my table. Okay. So this table is nothing but a subset of the Cartesian product, or subset of the Cartesian product. And I have told before that a relation is also a subset of the Cartesian product. So I can say in this relation model, a table is nothing but a relation mathematically. What mathematically is a relation? Its data structure is a table. Okay. So this is the fundamental thing. A table is nothing but a relation defined on the attributes. Of course, when you want to define a relation, you have to mention what are the sets on which you define the relation, individual set. It is a relation on attributes. Sorry. It is a relation on attributes. So this should be driven into your mind, that a table is nothing but a relation defined on the attributes, a subset on the Cartesian product, an instance. Okay. So now I have said that in my relational algebra, these objects x, y, z are tables. So basically these are now relations, and then you have relational operators. So you have relations or tables, you have relational operators, combining them, and then you have relational expressions. Okay. So usually the notation is the relation should be denoted by lowercase letter. So R is a relation defined over the attributes in uppercase, defined over 3 attributes. So R1 is a relation defined on ABC, is the notation. Okay, so Cartesian product of ABC, subset of that is R1. Similarly, maybe R2 is a relation on CD. So these are the attributes. This is the relation or table. Identical. So relation and table I'll identically say. Now one. A relational operator, let me call it as O, takes as input one or more relation depending on it is unary or binary operator and returns another relation R3. It takes two relation or more relation, returns another relation. Just like plus is a operator. Takes two variables, returns a variable. And now is a combination of these relational operators with in a form of a expression would be forming a relational expression. Relational. The output of a relational expression itself is another relation or a table. So output of this is a table, output of this is also a table, they themselves are table. Okay, this is to be noted down. So what we will do next is that study so this algebra, what is a operator, what is a expression is called a relational algebra, and it will discuss next what are the relational operators. Before that, let me quickly check any question on this. What is between the definition of a relation and what is a relational algebra? Any question? Please ask it now. There sure will be some question. I will be happy to clarify. The first relational operator we will study is called a selection operator. It takes this form. Sigma is the symbol of the operator. It is a unary operator, takes as input a relation or a table and a condition theta. So the form of the operator is unary, this is the symbol and this is a condition of the, I'll explain what is condition of the operator. So if this is my R relation or a table, maybe say R has two attributes. These are the rows of R, say 1, 2, 2, 3, 4, 5, integer values like this. These are the table. Theta can be like A greater than 1. So it can be a like sigma A greater than 1 R. This means select or pick up all the rows which have value which satisfy theta. That means as A greater than 1. So this satisfies, this satisfies. Pick up this entire two rows and make a smaller table. Same column, but not 3, only 2 rows. Only 2 rows. Only 2 rows. Okay. So 2, 3, 4, 5. Another smaller table. This smaller table is the output of this. Note that the output that we get after this is also a table, is also a relation. So this is my R1. If I call that as R1, this is my R1. So how do I get R1 from R? If R1 equal to sigma theta R, I check which are the rows of R which satisfy the theta condition. In this case, a greater than 1. This is the row, this is the row. Same column, those rows I pick up, put in another table. That table is my R1. That is the result of applying the operator. Okay, clear? So maybe I can have more complex operator. Maybe I can have R2 equal to sigma a greater than 1 and b less than 3 on R. A greater than 1, b not 3, make it 4, make it 4, b greater less than 4. So what are the rows? This row does not satisfy. This row satisfies. So only this row satisfies. This row does not satisfy. So R2 would have only one answer, 2 and 3. This would be R2, only 2 and 3, one row. Okay, with this is my, if this is my theta. So what this selection operator in effect does is that it leaves the columns untouched. It reduces the number of rows. It takes a subset of rows. Now the projection operator denoted by pi. It also is unary, operates on one relation or table, and in the subscript it has some columns, some attributes. Say it is a projection of R into AB. What it does, it leaves the rows unchanged but picks up only 2 columns. Same rows, only A and B columns. So this is my R1. This is my R1. So as if I just hide C and pick up A and B. Okay, that's your projection. Why it is called projection? It is like, it is again 2-dimensional coordinate system. Suppose if you have x, y and y, the projection of this 2 dimension to x is only the x coordinates, y coordinate removed, only the x coordinate. That is the projection of these points to here. Okay, so this is the projection operator. Okay, and then you have, so this is denoted by pi. Denoted by another operator, which is a binary operator. It takes two tables. Let us see how it does. Suppose I have R1 AB and I have 1, 2, 3, 4. I have R2 which has say CD, 2 attributes. Again say 10, 11, 12, 13. I have 2 tables, R1, R2. So how I will make the Cartesian product? So R, the Cartesian product, will have 4 attributes. And all possible combination I will take. I will take 1, 2, 10, 11, 1, 2, 12, 13. 3, 4, 10, 11, 3, 4, 12, 13. I will put it up. 3, 4, 12, 13. Okay. So every row here combine with every other row here, 1 2 with 10 11, 1 2 with 12 13, 3 4 with 10 11, 3 4 with 12 13, and each of these combination produce a new row in a bigger table. Okay, this would be called the Cartesian product table. This would be called the Cartesian product table. All possible. It is a binary operator. All possible combination. So this projection sigma, projection pi, selection sigma, Cartesian product cross. These three are called fundamental relational algebra operators. There are few more. I'll quickly explain them. There is another operator called the rename operator. It does nothing, just change the name of the table. So if you have R as a name, it will just rename it to R1. It has some use, we'll see later. Another binary operator, set union. This you can apply if R1 and R2 have the same set of attributes, only then they are unionable. Same set of attributes both. How do you take the union? Suppose I have 1 2 3 4, I have 1 2 4 5. I'll consider each as set, and the union R basically simple union. Similarly, you have set intersection or maybe set difference. So if I write R equal to R1 difference R2, it would be the tuples, the rows which are in R1 and not in R2, which are in R1 and not in R2. So can you tell what will be the result here? Result here will be only 3 4, same attributes. Again, you can take difference only when attributes are same. So 1 2 is here and also here, not there. 3 4 is here and not here. So these four operators are called the basic relational algebra operators. Selection, projection, Cartesian product, rename, row, and set union or set difference. This form the basic. You can now combine them together to form larger. So selection of R, projection of R2 into Cartesian product of R3. So you can form complex expressions using this. So today I stop here. This is up to my relational algebra. Next day we will see a real life implementation of this, which is the SQL query language. If you have any question, please ask. The slides, many of them are borrowed from the book on database by Silversaj, Scott, and Sudarshan. You can go to you can use these slides with little bit I modified. Otherwise, you can consult the course book also. I would like to give you some exercise of drawing an ER diagram for a movie system, a movie organization, and write simple relational algebra tables and queries to find out, say, all movies where Rajnikant has performed, things like that. And do this exercise. I will help you with this with the solution in the next class also. And in the next class, we will move on to SQL and functional dependencies and more details of design. So I will stop here. If there are any questions, I can answer. Okay. If there are no more questions, then thank you. Goodbye. See you next day.